though. The sound of summer. Huh. I didn't realize my microphone was on. Yes, sorry, I'm singing to myself, but my microphone was supposed to be off. Hello, I'm here early. I'll be starting in just a second. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, the dawn of a new season is upon us here on America's Racing League. Of course, it's Sunday, which means it's another season of the Big Grid Sundays series. 3 classes of GT3 action, taking to all the best circuits that LMU has to offer. A no fitting venue is the one that we are at tonight for the opening round. Of course, the Temple of Speed. We are at Monza. There's no more fitting place for race cars to go far too fast. And if you were watching the British, or excuse me, not the British GT, the World GT Challenge race earlier today, you know what it's really known for, and that's Turn 1 incidents, the Temple of T1 incidents, as I like to call it, not actually the Temple of Speed. But our drivers are getting ready to tackle a 90-minute race with double fuel, double tires, and double the fun. Looking to have a nice, healthy grid. And for those of you who were here So, apparently my microphone was muted. Something has occurred now in OBS. OBS is against me today. So I'll do my intro all again now that you all can hear me. Ladies and gentlemen, a new season is upon us for the Big Grid Sundays. Tonight we're at Monza, the Temple of Speed, or the Temple of Turn 1 Incidents. If you were watching GT World Challenge earlier today, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Hopefully we'll see a little bit less of that tonight. For those of you who were here a bit early, you got to hear me singing to myself, which is slightly embarrassing, but nonetheless, I changed some settings, and it appears those settings are working against me tonight. But all is well. We are here. We are ready to get underway. Of course, 3 different classes, the Amateur, Pro-Am, and Pro classes that take to the circuit all at once, but do have separate qualifying. We start with the slowest and work up to the quickest. So the pro drivers, excuse me, the AM drivers are taking to the track. It appears that we only have 5, maybe 6 of them that are roaming around at this point. Only 4 that have set laps so far, being Jerome NP, Todd Tillery, Bryce McClafferty, and Brendan Liu. One of which I think is a brand new name of Brendan Liu. So, Brendan, welcome to the championship. Welcome to the AM class, and hopefully we'll see you up in the pro standings soon, which seems to be the idea behind having slower classes, is you work your way up. You get pace, you find yourself higher up. Maybe the pro's not going to be for everybody. I don't belong in the pro, even though I apparently am a pro driver in the early Sunday races as of now in the LMP2s, which, if you like driving prototypes, go join that series. We had some fun at Monza as well this morning. A nice 90-minute jaunt, and it was a good race. I finished second, so that's pretty good. But not enough about my exploits, and more about the exploits of all of our drivers taking to the circuit. Still McClafferty, who is at the top of the field, just having set a quicker lap than was earlier. Our AM drivers have until 23 minutes left in the session, so a little bit more than 3.5 minutes. And then the Pro-Am will begin to stage and head out onto the circuit. A minute or so later, they get 10 minutes, followed by the Pro getting the final 11 minutes. Why did they get an extra 11 minutes? I don't know, but Jerome MP is taking his portion for a little bit of a ride out of Lesmo 2, and Todd Tillery needing to take some emergency avoiding action from that, or excuse me, that was out of Lesmo 1. But these should be, as by nature, on the slower end of qualifying times we see here tonight. But all of them giving it their best shot. They are fighting for their own championship, but they are sharing a track with everybody else, so it's always good. Qualify as best you can. If you can get a couple of Pro-Am or Pro cars in between you and your amateur rivals, that's all the better in the actual race. As Mr. Tillery pounds around, he's not looking to make any big moves on this lap. Down in all 3 sectors, up actually in the final sector, a purple final sector as it were. It does seem that Remwink's going a bit quicker, but not jumping up superbly high just yet. Todd Tillery, though, knocking on the door of Jerome's time. Only 7 thousandths of a second between him and Remwink as well, right up the back. So things are getting tight for second. Ryan McClafferty at the moment sort of having the world to themselves. And it seems that I'm wondering if our drivers are starting to get the best out of their tires, maybe. The GT3 tire is long wearing. It is an endurance compound. as it was designed for the World Endurance Championship. Fun fact, if you drive on ACC and you wonder, hey, why are the cars so much quicker? 2 reasons. LM GT3 cars have their own specification and are slightly heavier than GT3 cars, and also the tire compound in Assetto Corsa Competizione is a lot softer and a lot quicker. Fun little factoid for you there. It's me. I'm going to talk about tires. I'm going to talk about random things that come across my mind, as is my right. But McClafferty's coming around a bit of a sloppy sector 2, but they have time to set one final, hopefully blistering lap. Wink is improved in the first, but not improved in the second yet again. It could be a mighty third sector, really using all the circuit on the exit. Probably going to cut back towards the racing line, or towards the finish line, shortening that track as much as they can, and up to second position for Rem Wink. It was a full improvement across the lap. And Bryce McClafferty actually wasn't happy with their turn 1, I would imagine, and has decided to pit in. Themselves and others. Todd Tillery, I think, had a mistake and is pitting as well. So all eyes, the eyes of the nation, the eyes of the world, are now on Rem Wink's shoulders. I've also just realized you all have been hearing my music in the background for the last couple of minutes. Everything's going wrong. It's been a long week, and apparently it's not going to get any shorter. But I'll turn that off so that YouTube doesn't get angry and mute the stream. Yes, I do listen to music sometimes in the background of these streams. If it's a longer stream and I want to keep myself focused, I notice that a little bit of music in the background helps. I also listen to music while driving. I never don't. Some people find that distracting. I find it way too quiet if I don't have something to listen to in the background. Little tip for you there. A little bit of info from me to you. Rem Wink, though, tidy first sector. Yet again, second sector not looking super lightning. The Pro-Am drivers are all feeding out on to circuit, but unless it is lightning in a bottle in the third sector, I think it's going to stay second in Am for Wink. We'll see as they come across the line, and they're 296, and it's pink, so I like it. Across the line is Wink, and a tidy third, but not enough for any amount of improvement. It will be second position for them. All of our Pro-Am drivers coming out. Looks like we have 10 of them, I do believe. Bit of a heavier force of Pro-Am drivers. We have 12 Pro, 12 Pro-Am, and 8 amateur drivers in this championship. So if you're wondering, hey, why aren't there that many AM drivers? Well, there are less of them. Lots of support for different drivers in the YouTube chat. Some willing on Jerome, some willing on Saba and Alacron, but we'll see if that gives them any extra horsepower. It feels like it does. I don't know. Supportive friends, supportive families. It always makes a race car seem to find that extra 1% of pace, and in qualifying, that always will make a difference. We're on board now with Franz Alarcon as they're going to start what I believe is going to be the first hot lap of the evening for the Pro-Am drivers. And as is customary with qualifying sessions, we're not expecting the fastest times straight out the gates. Tires do need to come a little bit more into that window. We do have tire warmers on in these sessions, but I still find that you don't quite have maximum bite right out of the door. It seems to be very close, but that second lap, you have a little bit more temperature, a little bit more pressure, and you're a little bit more confident, I find. So Let's see how it goes. The BMW of Dion Campbell, you can see in the back of shot, has now gone purple in Sector 1, so robbing it from Franz. But we'll stay with Franz to see what the benchmark is going to be, and if that benchmark will set themselves apart from the AM class. Into Ascari. I was going to say dreaded Ascari, but it is a very, very fantastic section of corners. Very unique, as is this circuit. It's known for its straights, and it's known for what you got to do on the brakes. Another Sector 2 purple for Dion Campbell just behind. So I think the benchmark set in the Mustang is going to be quickly deposed by the BMW. Cameron Magruder seeming to have a little bit of trouble setting off a local yellow flag in their opening lap. It's going to be a 52.2 for Alarcon and a 50.8 for Dion Campbell. So my premonition was proved correct. Dion Campbell lighting up the times, going P1 overall on their opening lap. A couple more drivers feeding onto the circuit, but naturally I have to take a look at the Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo 2, as is my favorite. It's my favorite LM GT3 car. It's my favorite GT3 car. It's cool. It's got a cool engine. It's not very competitive, but it's got the vibes. Laurent Georgi, with those vibes, putting themselves 8th overall at the moment, and now begins the most fun and difficult part of my job in the series, which is trying to remember who's in what class. My hope is that this season will be broadcasted in full, so I will maybe say by round 6, which is the final round, I may be on it on who's in what class, as there have been a bunch of movement from the previous season, because by nature, champions of previous seasons tend to be bumped up a ranking, and if you're a pro driver and you won the championship, well, you got to defend your title, because there's nowhere for you to go. You're already at the peak. More purple sectors for Laurent Georgi. Actually, it's a false purple. It's just a minor miss in Sector 1. I think Dion Campbell is currently benefiting nicely from the tow off the back of that Mustang. I have a feeling maybe that Sector 3 is going to be looking pretty quick across the line. It is pretty quick. Another 4/10 to the good of everybody else. Gabriel Prado, the next Pro-Am to jump up to the, well, I guess the honor of being faster than an AM driver, as it were. And their Lexus, one of the few, what I call default livery, but others could call real-life livery on that Lexus. Everybody electing to, or most people electing to pull some sort of custom livery, whether they made it themselves, whether they downloaded it from Race Control. I like it. I enjoy seeing a bit of extra personality from other drivers. I do know, I was teased this morning that there will be a lot of Porsches and a lot of Rexies, and they're all going to be different colors. So we'll keep our eyes out for those. I do know one of them for sure. The original is driven by Cameron Magruder. The original AO Racing Rexy, which I'm noticing this is the AO Racing, the full IMSA spec. As you can see, notated by a couple of things. A, the badges on the car. It says GTD Pro. What the heck is that? These are LMGT3 cars. What do you mean? And also the gold tooth on the front to celebrate their win at the Rolex 24 in 2024, I believe. But that's one. Let's see if we can spot another. I believe, yes indeed, Randy Magruder, Cameron's father, is in Roxy, the pink dinosaur. So they are driving the appropriate original colors, but I do think there's a couple more that are going to be a bit different. bit unique. Gabriel Prado continuing to pound rounds in their Lexus, now going up to provisional pole for the moment and for Pro-Am. Laurent Georgi also stepping above, as well as Juan Botero of the time set by Bryce McLafferty. That sort of shows that that's a strong lap time by McLafferty, because it's standing to the testament of a lot of drivers. In fact, I would argue most of the pro drivers are currently sitting below that target time. See if Dion Campbell has an answer to that time. Not so. Coming out of Lesmo 1. Getting a bit too much onto the exit curb. Getting loose. Fortunately saving the car, though. And having to watch as Prado goes through and around. They will have another 2 minutes. Excuse me, actually 1 minute. 1 minute till Pro qualifying will begin and Pro-Am qualifying will end. It's currently Gabriel Prado at the top of the mountain. Dion Campbell second, Laurent Georgi third, Juan Botero in fourth, and Bryce McLafferty, the AM driver, still holding on to fifth position. Everybody getting ready to start their final flying laps. Not many drivers, though, are running on are running faster and faster laps. I think part of that is going to be due to the circuit temperature. It's a bit warm. 38 degrees is hot. Not just for Northern Italy, but for most racing circuits. I think tires are beginning to heat soak just a little bit and lose that tiny bit of extra edge that you're always looking for in a qualifying session. A couple drivers seem to be improving on their final laps. Perhaps our good friend in the Mustang, Franz Alarcon, is improving. One of the few that is. Craig S. I think is around, and that's going to bring the end of their qualifying session. But a couple of drivers definitely looking a bit out of position for Pro-Am. Laurent Georgi, I believe, is rounds, but is going to carry on. Never mind. Maybe. Never mind. Maybe. They are carrying on for the moment. Hoping to get that one final hot lap in. Improvement in Sector 1, improvement in Sector 2, not by much. All Alarcon needs to do is put down maybe another half a tenth, and they can find themselves starting in fifth. At least fifth for now, as we have still one more group of cars ready to hit the circuit, and they're beginning to hit the circuit now, but we'll see if Alarcon can go up. He's jumped a position, but not quite jumped all the way up ahead of the AM pole sitter. It does look like Gabriel Prado is going to hold on to their crown for pole position in the pro class, as the big boys, the pro drivers, heading out to the circuit in the yellow Iron Lynx Lamborghini Huracan, which I don't believe is a livery that is in the base game of Le Mans Ultimate. I think it's only the green one. And the green one might not even be... Maybe it is. Regardless, love a good Iron Lynx livery. They're a team that have raced the Huracan for many years in the WEC and other Intercontinental GT series. But they are carrying on the spirit in Sim. But these are our final, I think, 12, possibly 12 drivers. We may have the full pro field here for the opening round. They got the memo. They wanted to show up in full. Reminder that this is a 90-minute race coming up after this qualifying session with double fuel and double tires, which means you're using twice the fuel and they're using twice the tires. Kevin Boss in chat saying that I'm too used to seeing the Faf Lamborghini as he, in another series, drives that car. I am a bit, and I'm a really big fan of that car, and I'm so proud of you for taking it. I am a fan of the Lamborghini almost entirely because of Faf Motorsports. They got a second place, by the way, in Detroit last night. Just big news. Big news for them. The pro drivers sticking around, getting their first racing laps in, their qualifying laps in, excuse me. I must have been reading the racing on the hood and top and rear of Tetsuo Hideyashi's Porsche. Tetsuo, I think, hoping to right their wrongs in this car. Definitely struggled a bit last season behind the wheel of the Porsche 911 GT3R LMGT3, to give it its full legal name. But definitely looking to right the wrongs, and no better place to do that than the opening round of a championship. Make a statement. Say, I'm here to fight. And I'm here to fight for a win. As we all try to do. Kevin Rivera was going to say, going quick in the first sector, but finding themselves facing the wrong direction in the second chicane. The Ford Mustang limping back onto the circuit and will continue underway like nothing happened, and hoping that nobody saw it. Unfortunately for Kevin Rivera, everybody saw it. So, sorry, not sorry, as is the privilege of being in the booth. Luca Raza, an incredibly fast driver, and one who I believe is the reigning champion in the previous season of Big Grid Sundays. And yes, I'm going to go fact check myself on that immediately, so as I don't look like a bit of a goober. I do regularly make myself look like a goober. I was correct. Luca Raza is the reigning champion. Overall, in pro, intercontinental, fast as heck human being. Looking to defend their reign. And doing it in the same exact car. The All-Italia Ferrari 296 LMGT3. The benchmark, though, pipped immediately by Richard Farah. And then pipped immediately back by Miguel Saba. And it's getting to that part in the night where I can say one of my favorite things. 5 different manufacturers in the top 5 in qualifying. One of my favorite things about Le Mans Ultimate, and honestly most sims that handle GT3 cars, is the fact that just about any car at many levels is competitive. You can pretty much hop in whatever you want and get a good result. I mean, track to track, there might be a bit of, it's not as quick here, it's a bit quicker here, but everybody right now showing me that it doesn't really matter, and that it's still the case. Jace Wright has been the next to jump up to provisional pole position. And the times are really starting to tumble. 6/10 quicker than the amateur pole position is the time that has been set so far. The Inception Racing McLaren 720S Evo GT3, LMGT3, to give it its not full legal name, because I'm pretty sure I got that wrong. Quicker in the middle sector, not quicker in the first. That would lead me to believe a bit of struggles on the brakes into turn 1 and into turn 4, being the first and second chicanes. But we'll see what they can do in the final sector. It is an improvement, but not enough to find themselves a few positions higher. It does seem like these pro drivers are making a bit more use of an extra set of tires, maybe. Familiar circuit indeed, Mr. Boss. Familiar race length as well. If we're really you know, being pokey about it. It does seem to be the Ford Mustang is quite a popular car out here tonight. I do think, though, the Porsches have them outnumbered by just a few. Nick Dabrick. Or I could just call him Nick DeBrick. Because, let's be honest, the Mustang's kind of brick-shaped. So Nick DeBrick up in the first sector. Fastest of anybody so far. Tidy middle sector, but no improvement. Still on to find a couple of tenths at the least. Breaking in for Parabolica. Deceptively difficult circuit to find time on. And multiple different lines that can be used. Do I know the fastest one? Absolutely not. It's an improvement for Dabrick, but not as much as they were certainly hoping for. But 3 of our pro drivers pitting in, whether to take less fuel or to also take new tires. They know that the tire wear is such that they can get the best out of the car in really only 1 or 2 laps, as it seems. Jace Wright, having finished their outlap, is hitting the circuit again, trying to put as much distance as they can between themselves and anybody else for pole position, though. Miguel Saba absolutely knocking on the door. 12 thousandths of a second between them and the Lamborghini that currently sits provisionally on pole. Joshua Nelson as well, the next closest driver. When I was talking about different colored Rexies, here is another one. This is another one I heard about. It's the black dinosaur. The black Rexy, which I have to say, it looks quite good. I can tell it's been donned with some extra sponsor stickers more apparent to possibly the driver that conceived the livery. But it does look quite good. Quite a fan of it. Striking from the front for sure. Those teeth almost glow with the rest of the car being so dark. Impossible moment for Michael Molnix, who immediately goes into the garage, not wanting anybody to see their plight in 4K. Checking in on Jace Wright, he's coming around the final corner. It's possibly going to equal his best time, though it would need to be some sector to better it. I anticipate, though, by the line he was taking, he's preparing himself for this next lap, making the circuit round, keeping the most amount of momentum you can. It's something that you see with drivers at a high level. I call it taking the esports line in terms of prepping their final lap. It's not a strong start to their lap, though, going wide in turn 2. But they want to use all the track and all the ability they can to start their lap with the best run possible. And he's down in the first sector, but not as much. I think he held on to it pretty well. It's a lot of curb in the second chicane. Ferrari able to hang on to it a little bit. Mustang going off in the backgrounds there. It seems that only big upset I see perhaps is Hideyoshi down there in 16th, with Dan Poulin as well is a bit down. They're going to have to start in the middle of the field, which is going to be tricky. They're fighting for the guys up at the front in terms of points, but they still are racing the other classes. The other classes are not going to let them through. Jace Wright, though, not looking like they're going to improve on their time. Ricky Bobby, another car, all the way down in 21st at the moment. Somebody that was present at the race this morning and gave us one heck of a good fight. It was an excellent race this morning. And he did say, I'm quite slow in the GT3 car, not feeling terribly confident. And I think we're seeing a bit of that right now. But maybe a magical final sector can jump them up a couple of positions. Oh, a big wiggle. That does not look like a happy race car. And I think it's going to be into pit lane for Ricky Bobby. And that is going to bring an end to qualifying. And I'm going to rattle through them as quick as I can because they will go away if I'm not fast enough. Jace Wright on the pole. Miguel Saba starting on the front row. Richard Farah in third. Joshua Nelson in fourth. Nick Dabrick in fifth. Luca Raza in sixth. Chris Barnes in seventh position. Wally Johnson eighth. Kevin Rivera ninth. And Gabriel Prado rounding out the top 10. Dion Campbell in 11th. Michael Mulnix in 12th. Well, I already wasn't fast enough, but at least I have what's on my screen. Dan Jr. Paul Lynn is in 13th. Lauren Georgi 14th. Juan Botero 15th. Tetsuo Hideyoshi 16th position. Bryce McClaffery 17th. Randy Magruder 18th. Franz Alarcon in 19th. Cameron Magruder rounding out the top 20. And beyond that, I will not trust any of these because they're probably wrong, because as the session switches over, so do my results disappear. So you got your top 20. That's better than I do with most races. Of course, we're on for the full view of the full grid as they get ready for their race. And I'm expecting, if I'm honest, I'm expecting sensibility into turn one. It's the opening round of the season. It's the opening race. It would be a bit of a shame to throw it away in the opening moments. That being said, 29 LMGT3 cars thundering down towards turn one. Physics is physics, and it could maybe go just a little bit wrong for a select few, but I'm hoping that everybody gets through cleanly so we can get nice, hard 90 minutes of wheel-to-wheel. The race director, in all his Frenchness, has decreed that we are getting underway for the formation. A nice short formation. Not really any time for drivers to feel it out. Not really any time for drivers to maybe bring their brakes up to temperature. Maybe put a bit of extra tire pressure or tire temperature. Weaving is not allowed. All you can do is drag your brakes for that extra bit of brake pressure. You can see the flashing rear lights on the back of Jace Wright is an indication that his pit limiter is on. He's setting the pace at 60 kph as is ordered. They're coming around the final corner. 29 cars are going to start with us tonight. Will 29 cars finish? We are getting ready to go underway for the opening rounds of Big Grid Sundays, Season 7, the Temple of Turn 1. Will it be so today? Cars already stacking up, doing a bit of bumping in the background. A great start for Miguel Saba. On the outside is Jace Wright going to try to defend it. Not so. Everybody lines up for the most part, holding it cleanly into turn 1. Miguel Saba takes the lead of the race into turn 1. And a 10-second penalty immediately for Cameron Magruder for a jump start. It seems that everybody's stacking up into turn 1 in the background, but everybody clinically facing the correct direction for the moment. A drive-through penalty as well for Todd Tillery for further jumping of the start. Our front row starters, though, putting some distance between themselves and anybody around them. I'm very proud of everybody today. That was a very clean start, save for the few that maybe got a penalty or two, but everybody seeming to be on the circuit, trading positions everywhere are the back field. as everybody's trying to find their way, trying to find their footing, entering the Lesmos for the first time. That's not really somewhere where you can hang on too wide, but it's being held on. Bryce McClafferty and Randy Magruder going too wide for the moment. See how they look coming into Ascari. Magruder better on the brakes. The Porsche tending to be that way. The Lexus RCF, though, always a bit of a strong suit in the straight line, as it seems that there's going to be a dive for the outside and hard on the brakes for both of them into Parabolica for the first time as they begin to complete their first lap. I think I called this as Bryce McClafferty earlier. I apologize. It's Juan Botero, of course. McClafferty's ahead in the AMG. They're going to stay too wide, so we're going to stay with them down towards turn one. I do believe that was Todd Tillery diving into pit lane to serve their drive-through penalty that they got on the formation. Nothing between the two as they come into the brakes for turn one. The Lexus is on the inside, so chances are they'll keep the position. Randy Magruder trying to hold it outside, a little bit of touching, and comes over the curb, but loses the position, and crucially now is under pressure from the cars behind. They got a better run out of the first and second corner. So through goes Craig S. in the Corvettes, but Randy now is boxed out, but he's found his way back in. Is now Franz Olacron is going to be the next to go in. Randy having a really busy opening lap, and he's trying to fight for all he's worth as we head back forward to the top few, and it's Luca Raza, it's Joshua Nelson, and it's Nick DeBrick, all fighting together. Nelson's up ahead in the Rexy 2x2, just behind of Johnson and Rivera, but it's going to be tricky. They're going to need to sort this one out. Coming into Ascari, oh, it's almost three wide, but Luca Raza from the inside is able to get ahead. He's able to keep it ahead. He's sort of parking on the apex. Joshua Nelson trying to get his run as he comes out, but he isn't really able to hang on to it. Coming in, though, there may be a maneuver on the brakes. You can see still too wide behind the two Mustangs now of DeBrick and Poulin and Rivera are fighting just behind, but not the best qualifying position, but Luca Raza's already up a couple of those positions. As Rivera has gone round in Parabolica, I do believe. And he's dropping back like a stone, and I think immediately into pit lane for Kevin Rivera. So a bit of an unfortunate accident, and I think just one too many bad things happening for a driver in the opening moments, knowing my race is over. I'm not catching up to the drivers in my class. It is a long race. There's a lot of strategy involved, so I wouldn't say to maybe give up so early. But looking throughout the field, Chris Barnes trying to make his way around Laurent Georgi. Elbows out for these two. The Aston Martin versus the Lamborghini, a bit of door-to-door. As now DeBrick seems to have a run down the inside of Lesmo 1, but he's got a better exit, does Barnes, and still going to stay too wide into, oh no, just around and door shut. Chris Barnes is going to hold on to that position, which is for 9th place. Things are not going quietly here tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Everybody showing in force. But Chris Barnes holding off and hoping to move forward. The fight at the front is hot, is heavy. Looking further back, we're going to go on board with Brendan Liu under a bit of pressure for 24th. Rodney Ramsey and Denzel Kitchens are behind. Ramsey in the Corvette, Kitchens in that, well, let's just call it very familiar BMW, as we've seen him drive so many times. He has the run on the Corvettes, but he's going to have to do it around the outside, and he's worried about Liu in the front. He's sort of getting a bit of wiggle coming into the corner and coming round. They are making it through, but I think the Corvettes just held on to it. Is Ramsey It was a good move on the brakes, but I think that dirty air and maybe a bit of nervousness onto the back of Lou's Mustang felt the need to back out. But they're one by one, all going through. More movement in the top 10. Joshua Nelson losing out for a moment to Dan Poulin. He made his way through on the brakes into the second chicane as we just caught it. I think a little bit of rubbing between the two, but keeping it fair. After all, you can race hard, but race fair. Because that's the only way to keep it fun. Dropping back a few positions, Dion Campbell with Tetsuo Hideyoshi, who's made a reasonable start up a handful of positions now, breathing down the neck of the BMW, but Gabriel Prado is behind. It's a bit of a pro-am sandwich with some pro meat for the moment. Everybody's beginning to spread out just a little bit, and the pit stops are going to come quicker than you might think. After all, they're basically going for half as long, using twice as much fuel. Jace Wright has put in the fastest lap of the race. Our leader continuing to hold on, actually retaking the lead early on after losing it for a moment. Just ahead of this fight, Chris Barnes continues to hold back the Mustang and the Lamborghini of Laurent Georgi and Nick DeBrick. Just ahead, though, too wide, is Joshua Nelson and Dan Jr. They're really fighting it, but out of the second chicane, a huge exit. Big speed for Joshua Nelson, and he's going to stick it up the inside of Lesmo 1, and Poulin's going to do his best to stay around the outside, but that's so tricky to do. Their fight now has brought Chris Barnes just behind a little bit closer, and a little bit wide is the Mustang. We'll see coming down towards Ascari, who had the better exit. It might very well be Poulin, but on the brakes, though. Can't drive through the car. Poulin is hanging on momentarily. Some movers in the midfield. Cayman Magruder finding himself in a scrap with Juan Botero. Making his way up to 14th. After all, that 10-second penalty still looming. A bit of movement. Driver's not 100% sure where they want to end up. Cameron trying to turn in for the corner. He's finding out that there's a Lexus on the inside. The Lexus pushing wide, scrubbing just a bit, but I think they're going to keep making little bits of contact. And I will say, the front end of that Porsche looks like it has seen some things. I'm wondering if early in this race, Cameron found himself chomping at the back of another race car, but we're coming down to turn 1, and Cameron's weaving all over the place, and I don't really know why he's doing that, because after all, he's weaving instead of braking, and he's tapped the back of Georgi, sending them both through on that corner, and both certainly into a bit of a penalty. I think he was trying to decide whether he wanted to go right or left, and couldn't figure it out, with Botero just driving it up the inside. But I think maybe a looming damage repair and that looming 10-second penalty is going to be tricky for Magruder to overcome. It seems that Nick DeBrick has found his way past Chris Barnes for the moment. The top 7 cars, well, top 10 really, still sort of staying within touch with each other. Jace Wright still leads. Miguel Saba following. Richard Farah in the McLarens currently in 3rd. Luca Raza 4th. Wally Johnson is 5th. This is the fight for 10th. Just a few positions down. Chris Barnes has really just had to play a defensive game here. Tetsuo Hideyoshi just behind, though, all over the back of the BMW. Thinking about a move. Speaking of Porsches with a little bit of front aero damage, it looks like that Porsche has seen himself his fair share of battle, and he got a better exit, but I don't think that Porsche's going anywhere in a straight line because of that drag produced by damage on the front, though. Dion Campbell brushing a bit wide out of Parabolica, and seeming like we're going to have a 2x2 Noah's Ark style into turn 1, but nay. Campbell's going to drop back. Somebody came out of pit lane. That was Randy Magruder going early. That's 2 cars across the circuit. That was Georgi and Nelson, or I believe, or maybe that was Poulin, I believe, that went in deep. I'm wondering if there was a bit of contact between the two, and I do believe there was. And we'll get a replay of that going in just a moment. But that's created a bit of a different situation. It's compressed 8th through 11th, 8th through 12th really, really heavily. But we're going to look back at the moments for Laurent Georgi and Dan Jr. Poulin into turn 1. See, maybe a bit of a late braking maneuver for the Lamborghini. That is too late. That's way too late. And he barely tagged Poulin, actually. It was a different Mustang. I believe that was Nick DeBrick, who went deep. But it was well avoided by Laurent Georgi, I will say that, because that Lambo was steaming into the apex and just decided, I'm going to go left. I'm going to stay out of the way. I do not want to take out multiple cars. Jace Wright still climbing forward in terms of quick laps. We'll take a look back just a bit further in the field. Jerome and Cedric Larcher, 21st and 22nd. The fight for 21st between them. They just traded places moments ago. I think Jerome was through out of Ascari. And I'm wondering if the Aston Martin has it in them to catch up, repass, retake the position. Just seems that Jerome has the go for the moment. So Jerome's saying, thank you, I'm moving forward. I got positions to make up. I believe at the moment, we've only lost one car. Excuse me, we've lost 2 cars. Kevin Rivera and Michael Molnix, a Mustang and a Lexus RCF, have both retired. One on lap 1, and I believe one on lap 2. I do believe. This is Denzel Kitchens catching Rodney Ramsey and trying to get through. These two were fighting earlier on, though they had another car, I do believe, holding them back just a little bit. It was a bit of a 3-way battle. I unfortunately don't remember which car that was. But now that we're not in a position where there's 15 cars occupying the same bit of circuit, you can realize how quiet it is. Not that the Corvette C8 and the BMW M4 are the loudest race cars. They're actually one of the quieter ones, but I feel like it's just a nice, serene Sunday drive through northern Italy. Looking back to our favorite trio of Georgi, Hideyoshi, and Prado, these 3 have been keeping us entertained for a little while. We're only 16 minutes into this race, which is rather impressive, given all the action we've had so far. If we take a look at all the cars' virtual energy, we're realizing that we're about 2/3 of the way through this stint, and it's starting to give you an idea of who's saving and who isn't. The big question in my mind is Jace Rice. He is leading, not by too much, but he's used about half a lap and what might end up being a full lap more fuel than Miguel Saba and Richard Farah. Richard Farah doing a great job of saving that bit extra fuel than their rivals, but no big gaps in energy so far, which tends to be the case in the first stop. We'll sort of see as we get into the final pit stop. You'll realize there'll be cars that are stopping 3, 4, 5 laps later than others. Speaking of Richard Farah, he may appear to be saving, but he's all over the back of the Shelby American Ford Mustang LMGT3 driven by Miguel Saba. The gap's been fairly steady with regards to, you know, a gap inside of 1 second. It is a gap inside of 1 second. It hasn't really changed. And I wonder, and I theorize, because if I was Richard Farah, I would be doing the exact same thing of, all right, their pace is good. They're not slowing me down. So how about I use their car to save more fuel? After all, you tend to go a bit quicker when behind another car in terms of straight line, which the amount of straight lines on Monza, I do not need to explain why that would be a boon. And you can stay behind. Your car is cutting through the air a bit more efficiently. But I say that, and actually, Miguel Saba keeping themselves in the mirror for a moment. They are very close into the braking zone, but I do think they are going to use that slipstream bubble, gain a bit of extra fuel, and hopefully overtake on strategy and maybe not on pace. Looking further back in the field, Franz Alarcon and Ricky Bobby keeping each other company in the fight for 17th. As they come around the final corner, that's Craig S. ahead, and Randy Magruder's Porsche, who is a lap down, I'm afraid. Franz Alarcon, though, using a lot more fuel than Ricky Bobby. Rather, I think it's that Ricky Bobby is saving an absurd amount. So most of the field around are running in the 14 to about 18% partial energy. If you want to talk averages, which I do like averages, I like average use, fuel usage. Ricky Bobby, 7.5% average over 3 laps. Most of the cars around him, 8% plus. Franz is doing 8% just ahead. And it might not mean a whole lot in the opening stint, but trust me, as everybody who drove the race this morning realized that this fuel save can really put you in a good position late in the race if you manage to use the right amount of fuel and hold on the right amount of pace. Tetsuo Hideyoshi under just a little bit of pressure from Gabriel Prado. His last 2 laps being invalid for Tetsuo, meaning that he's right on and perhaps right past the limit. I mentioned how his Porsche in a straight line was looking a little peaked in terms of pace. That's Chris Barnes, excuse me, who's around, and also that was Joshua Nelson, who was parked on the apex there. Joshua Nelson is now down to 4th. I do see a piece of contact on my screen, a replay between the two of them, so I'm wondering if this was why they ended up where they did. Nelson goes deep. They're fair coming out, and oh, it looks like it's a little hard to tell from that angle, but Nelson not necessarily leaving enough room, maybe tagging Chris on the exit. So perhaps we will take a look at that again from the perspective of Chris Barnes's car. I just want to see that from the driver's eye view. Because Barnes is on the outside, remember, cuts back. See the Porsches on his outside as he comes onto the curb. Oh, well, should have watched that from the other car. But it definitely looks like the steering was straight on for Barnes in the Aston Martin, leading me to believe that it was a bit of assistance from Joshua Nelson. Everybody just about from the front of the field coming in down pit road. It's very busy in the opening stint. As a reminder, for those of you who are a bit unfamiliar with Le Mans Ultimate, full contact in the pit lane. You do have to pay attention when drivers are coming in like this to your release. You are not told if you have a clear release. You do have to use your mirrors, you have to use your radar, you have to use your head a little bit to get out freely and get in to pit lane as well. Can be tricky. Races have been ruined in pit lane. I've had a race or two ruined in pit lane. It's just part of the event, and something I appreciate with Le Mans Ultimate is full contact all the time. Formation lap in pit lane, the works. Which can be tricky, but I think it's a whole lot of fun. Richard Farah, though, taking the lead of the race with their fuel saving. Seems that Chris Barnes, Tetsuo Hideyoshi, and Ricky Bobby were the only 4 drivers who managed to save that extra lap in the first stint. And I do think Ricky Bobby benefiting from a bit of experience in the race this morning. Perhaps if they would have fuel saved just a bit, they may have had a different result. That is all I will say about that. But the benefit of experience and the benefit of using a bit of strategy, especially when you start outside of your field, you start a bit down, you need to find your way forward. And if you don't have the pace, you race smart. And that can get you quite a bit forward. Ricky Bobby starting in, I believe, 21st when the race began 25 minutes ago. And we'll see where they end up in an hour and 5 minutes. Jace Wright, I do believe, will retake the lead of the race once they come round. I have a sneaking suspicion it's going to be a bit close as they come down, as Richard Farah comes out of pit lane. He's exiting the pits now. As soon as that pit disappears, he's on the circuit. He is on the circuit, going a bit slowly, but Richard Farah nice and close, still breathing down the necks, not losing time, but perhaps not gaining any. The top 5, though, really only separated by... Or the top 4, rather, only separated by about 5 seconds after the opening stint. No big movers, really, to speak. It does look like for Joshua Nelson and Chris Barnes, after that incident they had, they are down some positions. just behind. That's Juan Botero. Feeling the heat. Yet again, Tetsuo Hideyoshi is behind him, and they've been dueling for a while. Now they have a friend. Or an enemy, depending on your point of view. Of Chris Barnes, who we know is quick, who's running up towards the head of the fields for quite a while. And is still holding firm. But no big drama. Which is, I sort of see as kind of a good thing. Given the nature of this circuit, given the nature of this being the opening round of a championship. Everybody keeping it nice and clean. For the moment. There's been a bit of bumps and scrapes. There's definitely a lot of damaged-looking cars, I will say. So you're right on board with Chris Barnes for the moment. Thinking he might have a look into the Parabolica, but you can hear that lifted coast from Barnes. And having to feather the throttle just a bit at corner exit. These two, I think, are going to be too wide coming down. It just really doesn't seem that Tetsuo's Porsche has got the go in that straight. I think they decided not to fix the damage in pit lane. I don't believe... No, certainly that car's still looking a little bruised and battered, but Barnes is down the inside at turn 1 and out of turn 2 as he begins his recovery drive to get to further ahead after their incident with Joshua Nelson a few moments ago. The father and son duo sharing a piece of circuit, but under this circumstance, having to fight each other. Cameron having to serve his 10-second penalty in pit lane, as well as what certainly looks like doing a bit of damage repair. So, two Rexies, well, a Rexy and a Roxy. Father leading son. And I really hope, for the sake of both of them, because it would be an awkward conversation over dinner, they both, whatever happens, they do it cleanly, ultimately. I've also realized that is the WEC appropriate Roxy, but the IMSA appropriate Rexy. So there's some level of cursedness. I think Cameron trying to apply pressure on his old man, but finding himself a bit deep in the second chicane. But the dinosaurs are certainly going to fight like it's going out of style, and I will do my best to keep an eye on what's happening. It was a pass and repass for Hideyoshi that last lap, but Barnes is getting ahead again. This fight, though, costing them time just a bit. Alexis Juan Botero, as you can see on the timing screen, 3 and a bit seconds ahead already just from their scrap. But this is a fight for position in class. Both pro drivers, remember, so it is definitely worth fighting for. Speaking of Juan Botero, here he is trying to make it down the inside of Joshua Nelson. He gets the move stuck. Only just. But the black dinosaur not happy with that and wants it back immediately. You can see on the prowl, immediately stepping out just a bit into the mirrors, saying, hey, I'm here, don't forget me. And down the straight, it seems that with the aid of Slipstream, that Nelson's not out of it, but on the brakes, two different lines. Botero taking a lot more of that inside curb. Nelson favoring a different line as they come out of the corner, about equal. So I think Juan Botero is going to hold on to it for the moment. Now let's take a look at the fight for second place, because it's beginning to heat up. They've kept in touch with Jace Wright, and I think Jace Wright has backed off of their fuel usage just a bit, it seems. They're using just a little bit less than they were last stint, so maybe realizing that could be an issue down the line. But it's Miguel Saba in the Shelby American Mustang, which feels very appropriate. And the Inception Racing McLaren, driven by Richard Farah, just behind. This was your top 3 in qualifying and has remained your top 3 for most of the race. In the opening moments, Saba found himself ahead of Wright off the launch and into turn 1, but Richard Farah, Jace Wright, retook the lead and has stayed there for the first 32 minutes of this race. The double tires begs the question of, I feel not an if, but a when on tires. Monza is possibly one of the least wearing circuits in terms of tire of the circuits in Le Mans Ultimate. You can certainly triple stint a set of tires if you want to, but the interesting thing about double fuel wear, or double tire wear, excuse me, is that you end up using a bit more than twice, because you're driving the car the same as you would, and you can't really, you're driving it as hard for half as long, which sort of translates to a bit more than twice the wear. So I would anticipate everybody stopping. The question is, everybody taking a new set, at least a new set of tires, possibly a new, only a set of left sides, being a counterclockwise circuit. Counterclockwise, it's a clockwise circuit, ladies and gentlemen, all over the place. Just so excited to be back on LMU. It's been a while since I've broadcasted an LMU race, and for that I apologize, and I will tell you I've been getting my schedule in check. I started streaming an unmanageable amount, a bit too much, so I'm trying to commit to specific series, so I will be committing as best as I am able to this series for its entirety, and perhaps other appearances on other series as I see fit. Lot of curb in the mid-corner for Richard Farah, and I think to his detriment, he's dropping back just a hair. But my schedule for broadcasting on ARL, as it stands, will be Thursdays for iRacing and Sundays for this Big Grid Sundays, which will continue for the next 6 weeks. The iRacing Thursday GT3 series is wrapping up. 3 rounds to go of 12. It's been a long series, but it has been excellent. So if you enjoy GT3s, watching GT3s here, recommend checking out Thursday. iRacing might not be your thing. It's not mine, but I will tell you, the races have been excellent start to finish. So that is what you can expect from me. Of course, some things might happen as well. May decide to perhaps change it up. For the moment, that's the plan, for anybody that was wondering. Leon Vejo in chat makes a good point. It's a cleaner race than one they had today, and honestly, I would argue a cleaner race than most I've seen at Monza, and I've seen a few. I've driven a few as well. I would say, our race this morning was very clean, but we had 1/3 of the cars that are on circuit tonight, so not a fair comparison. But no, these drivers have done absolutely excellently. Their first lap was really the only drama were a pair of penalties for starting infractions, but everybody just doing an incredible job to hold it together. Jerome NB is finding themselves under pressure from Craig S. And it's JNP versus CS, so it's one of the few drivers, I think the only two drivers that aren't sharing their last name. So it's the two. I feel like I could come up with a nickname for both of them. None coming to mind. We'll say the purple Porsche feeling the need to go defensive into Ascari, momentarily sort of stepping over, saying, "Hey, you're not getting past." Out of Ascari, though, really good exit for them as they come out. Some shifting between Todd Tillery and Franz Alarcon, two amateur drivers. Alarcon got through in Ascari, I do believe, and Todd Tillery trying to take that back, and I think is going to get it back because wide, very wide, out of the corner goes Alarcon, the gold and black Mustang. And I do think that might have had something to do with Tillery getting in the mirrors a bit in the braking zone, maybe spooking Alarcon just a bit. We are already just about halfway through the second stint. A couple of drivers, though, already separating themselves in terms of virtual energy. Deion Campbell, though, realizing that Gabriel Prado's on the inside, is going to try to hang it from the outside, but couldn't find himself with enough room as Prado goes through. But a couple of drivers finding themselves that what was 50% is now just a little bit below or just at, where you can really start to see the difference between those who are fuel saving and those who are not. I can imagine that everybody, for the most part, is saving fuel, but it's different levels. It's, you know, Richard Farah possibly lifting 150, 200 meters before corners, where the likes of Jace Wright and Miguel Saba only lifting 50 meters. I would anticipate everybody's doing a bit of Lyco. But Richard Farah saved one lap in the opening stint, is looking to save an extra in the second. So they'll find themselves at the end of the three stints, at the end of the four stints, with a pretty remarkable gain of free pace, because ultimately the idea behind fuel saving, if you're a bit unfamiliar with that type of race strategy, because you say, I mean, what does it matter? Everybody's got to stop. You know, everybody needs fuel, so why save it? Wouldn't you slow yourself down? Yes, but there are two things to fuel saving that I think is worth mentioning. Also, Richard Farah doesn't seem to be slowing down at all behind Miguel Saba, but you can see he's stepping out of the slipstream in order to not overtake. So absolutely using that big Mustang in the wake that it shows to save a bit of extra fuel and maintain pace. Really, really smart racing from there. But firstly, in a longer endurance race, if you save enough fuel, there's an opportunity for you to skip a pit stop, essentially. In shorter races such as this, the idea is in the final pit stop, the driver ahead of you needs to fill up with an extra 3 laps more fuel than you, which in this race would be about 36% or 32% more virtual energy roundabout, which is, you know, a third of a tank, which is about 15 to 18 seconds extra time stationary. So you're gaining 15 seconds in the pit stop. The other thing, which I think most people don't realize, is once you start lifting and coasting, this I think applies to drivers such as me who are not nearly the caliber of these two, well, these three that are on screen right now. is such that once you find yourself in a lift and coast, you're not underdriving the car, but you're driving in a more comfortable fashion in which you will make less mistakes. And in a whole stint across an entire race, you might find that you're actually going quicker simply because you're making less mistakes. So if you haven't tried fuel saving and you drive LMU, absolutely do it. It's a really easy way to basically go faster. And I don't want to call it early, but as it stands, Richard Farah is putting himself in an incredible position to win this race. Is there still 48 minutes? Could anything happen? Absolutely. But at the moment, on strategy, they are winning this race. Thank you for coming to my Lift and Coast TED Talk. I appreciate you being here. Things are beginning to spread out, as they regularly do. We're reaching the halfway distance mark in our race, and Bryce McClafferty is knocking on the door of Tetsuo Hideyoshi. Bryce McClafferty, of course, an AM driver who's found themselves in the top 15. It was a very impressive start if they can hold on to it. Yet again, though, I'm amazed, quite frankly. I have a screen in front of me that basically tells me, it's how I pull up replays, and it will populate with if there's a yellow flag, if there's contact, if there's whatever. There's basically been little to no yellow flags in the last several laps. It's all just been overtakes. It's all just been clean, hard racing, which is fantastic. Thank you, Leon, for enjoying my fuel-saving class. It's an important bit of racing, I think. It's something that everybody needs to have in their tool belt. And this is also, for full transparency, coming from an endurance driver. I pretty much strictly do endurance racing. It's what I find myself enjoying the most. So fuel saving it's win or lose in an endurance race. You do it. If you don't do it, it's very, very hard to win in, a 6 hour plus race if you're not going to do a bit of fuel saving. So it's not as important in races like these, though I do feel that with double fuel, it plays like a 3 hour race. So keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. Perhaps my point will be proven, as it has many, many times before. But it does seem that Porsche of Tetsuo Hideyoshi is really looking like they are loose just about everywhere. Wally Johnson now knocking on the door of Luca Raza. Michael Sutton has put their predictions for the race in the chats of Richard Farah taking victory with Raza and Johnson joining them on the podium. And I'm gonna be honest, I think that's a pretty good call at the moment. I have to admit. I think there's a possibility you're onto something here. I do think, though, Wally Johnson, they're not on the fuel save strat. So I think Roz is going to join on the podium maybe at this stage. But I don't know. I do agree. Chris Barnes is absolutely flying. I knew he would. He's got the bit between his teeth. There's two things that happen when there's an accident like that for a driver. They give up or they go fast. They get the bit between their teeth. They're realizing, I can't take this. I can do better than this. Chris Barnes, of course, closing up on the back of Joshua Nelson, which was the driver that was involved in the incident earlier on. So maybe a bit of, something in the water between the two. Leon Vallejo also insisting that Wally Johnson will be on the podium. So is this just the Wally Johnson fan club, or do you guys know something I don't? It's entirely possible for both, and by all means, support any and all driver that you would wish. Some drivers already hitting pit lane early in the mid-pack. Perhaps using a lot of fuel here. I have definitely noticed that at the front of the field, Jace Wright and Miguel Saba have absolutely dropped back their fuel usage. Ah, okay. Sorry, Michael. I thought you were predicting the top three there. Not, hey, these three are fighting. That's funny. I'm taking it as a prediction though, because now we're talking about it. So that was your prediction. You can adjust your prediction if you so choose. But no, I think the top three are in a really, really good spot. Richard Farah is doing an excellent job with the fuel save, and I think Luca Raza is going to save an extra lap as well. It's looking like they're just on the bubble, but I think they're going to do it. That last lap, they used barely any fuel at all, which I think is why Wally Johnson caught up as quickly as they did, because Wally Johnson will peel into pit lane, and Raza will be on their own. And for the second time tonight, Richard Farah has taken the lead of the race for the moment. Oh no, Michael, you're all good. There's no need to apologize. I think that just has started a trend. I think everybody who's currently watching, if you would so like, give me your finishing prediction. Give me your top three. I will not share mine, just simply because I don't know. I feel like that's bad taste. I feel like that's rude. I feel like then I'm pulling favorites, and I don't want to pull favorites. I am a impartial, omnipotent viewer. I've also only just realized this Inception livery McLaren is actually has IMSA stickers on it. I've only just realized that. But, well, there's an IMSA sticker on the nose, but it's got the WEC number. Is that just how the Inception livery has always been in this game? Have I never noticed that? I suppose I haven't had one in my rearview mirror close enough where I've been able to notice, but fun fact. Also, yes, if you vote on your livery of the day. Leon Vallejo likes the Alitalia livery, which I'm a big fan of it as well. I believe, I could be mistaken, but I believe it's harkening back to it's completely slipped my mind. I was about to say it. Harkens back to the Lancia Stratos rally car. At least that's what I remember seeing it on. It could be something else. Luca Raza is in for their pit stop, as well is Richard Farah. Chris Barnes will be coming down next. And out of pit lane, though, a bit of drama. Miguel Saba is out and ahead of Jace Wright. I do, in fact, believe we've seen our first tire change. Jace Wright from the lead took tires and took the gamble early. I think taking the gamble early is not correct. I think possibly he's doing it at the right time. If you have to take tires, you may as well do it at the midpoint. Then you have optimal tire life across the entire race. So I think that might be a really good call from Wright. I wonder, though, because of how close Richard Farah was ahead of Miguel Saba, where they're going to be out of pit lane, and given that Richard Farah is already out, and I believe already coming through turn one, yes, there he is, has now taken the net lead of the race in the final 40 minutes. Our first official top three prediction is Wright, Saba, and Johnson from Leon Vallejo, counting out Richard Farah entirely. Are you watching the same race I am? He's currently winning the race. I think the gamble for Jace Wright on tires, we'll see if that pays off. And we'll see if they're able to stomp through the field. They will have to heat those tires up, but I do anticipate greater pace in this stint than others. Well, we shall see. 38 minutes remain. 2 stops are done for the entire field. 1 pit stop remains. And the question on the lips of the nation is, will Richard Farah, now that they are ahead, they don't have their big flying fuel-saving brick of Miguel Saba ahead of them, will they maybe change strategy a bit? Maybe will they, you know, adjust the driving style just a tad? I don't know. We shall see. Chris Barnes is continuing his charge for the field. Within the pit stop, jumped, I think, several cars. I think he was in about around 15th position and is now all the way up in 12th, currently chasing for 11th. Which does beg the question. Never mind. My question is pointless. But Chris Barnes is through, is the answer to the question I wasn't asking. He's up and through and into 11th. Certainly looking for a top 10, if greater, ahead, as Joshua Nelson and Gabriel Prado are going to duel it out just a bit. You can see Chris Barnes in the back of that shot, close behind. If these two start fighting, start losing a bit of time, that could be good news for Barnes. That could be bad news for the two, but Joshua Nelson's quick. Both of these drivers are quick, quite frankly. Is it a bit boring to say all the pro drivers are quick, as is the pro category as a whole? I do wonder if Michael Sutton saying that it was a bit of a poor pit stop from Wally Johnson. I was looking up at my timing screen and I completely missed Gabriel Prado getting the run out of the second Lesmo on Joshua Nelson. It could have happened earlier, but I was reading numbers. So Prado was up, Prado was through, and it looked almost a little bit easy. Sutton saying, though, that Wally had a terrible pit, and I was wondering if I could check if he had changed tires, but it seems that that widget is still not working, so I have no idea if Wally Johnson changed tires, but if he suddenly lost 12 seconds in the pits, could be so. I have a sneaking suspicion. Never mind. I tried to check again, but I didn't know. Juan Botero is having their neck breathed down gently by Tetsuo Hideyoshi. I'm wondering, did Tetsuo finally fix that Porsche? Is it? Looks like it might be fixed. Never mind. It is still broken. Leon, can you do me the favor of reminding me what the Red Bull strategy is in reference to? Because that can mean a lot of things. Jace Wright, though, on those fresh new tires, fancying himself a run around Luca Raza. He's going to try to stick it around the outside. A little bit of hip and shoulder in the Scari. That's a difficult place to try to go for a move there. No space was given to Wright from Raza. And you could see Josh Wright on the exit there. A little bit of a flash saying, hey, that might have been a bit naughty. But it's Wright needs to get through on Raza ASAP to make use of those tires, because the longer he's stuck behind that 296 it can hurt his fight for the lead, because they are going quicker than these two. The Red Bull strategy, as it turns out, is being super aggressive on changing tires and preferring that to track position, which does seem like that is exactly what Wright has done. That is a good reminder, Michael, thank you, that if you're seeing people suddenly about 12 seconds slower, or maybe a bit more, coming out of pit lane, that is because they took 4 tires. That takes 12 seconds! Coming out of the second chicane, though, Raza got it a bit wrong. Wright tried to take the room and found himself running out of room. These two are fighting like lions. Wright has the run, though, out of the second Lesmo, but he's fighting the 296, yet again budging his way through. Luca Raza is giving no room whatsoever. He says, this is my corner. Find yourself another one. Right now, getting certainly a bit impatient. He might try it around the outside. Nascari again. He's going very aggressive on the brakes. This time he's given room by the 296 and a bit of touch on the exit. But Wright has made it stuck on the second attempt. See if he can hold it there. That costing a bit of time. A bit of a flash from Luca Raza. Maybe not pleased with the way that went, but from what I can see here, both drivers racing incredibly hard, giving each other equal space, and Wright goes through. An excellent fight from the pair. A former champion and a Lamborghini on a tear. Giving us a good show, and I wonder if Raza's going to try to fight it back. That looked late on the brakes. I don't know if there was a touch from Raza. Jace Wright, though, he is not concerning himself with the 296 behind. He's absolutely looking forward. Unfortunately, though, he lost a lot of time with that fight. Now 11 seconds back from Saba and Farah. And it's bad news for the pair. It's good news for Wally Johnson in 5th, who is able to close up just a little bit. Now down just under 3 seconds. Wright's going to need to go damn quick. Throw caution to the wind. Say maybe no to fuel saving. Jace Wright needs to use these tires. You know, I'm being lied to. My timing stream was saying that these two are close. As it turns out, they're not. Juan Botero ahead of Tetsuo Hideyoshi, and looking like a little bit of a drift, a four-wheel drift out of Lesmo 2. Yes, sir. Tires are 2x. 2x tire wear, and 2x fuel usage. So it's it's an hour and a half race that plays like a 90-minute race, which is always a bit fun. But I am going to take a quick moment, try to restart my timing screen, because it did not appear to be updating. I think now I'm all right. I was missing all my numbers that I so dearly enjoy. And things are looking good. It was 3 seconds, Hideyoshi and Botero, but now it is down to less than 1. Todd Tillery and Rodney Ramsey are finding themselves for company in 22nd and 23rd. More predictions from the Oracle Leon Vallejo. He's thinking that Jace will most likely catch Miguel by the end of the race, and I think he will on pace. He will certainly on pace, but on the return strategy, because Miguel is using so much less fuel, there might be an opportunity for Miguel to jump him back in pit lane. We're just past 2/3 distance in our race tonight, and things calming down just a bit, but not enough to say that there's no racing going on. Denzel Kitchens and Craig S. One chasing the other for 18th. Corvette versus BMW. Front engine versus mid-engine. Straight 6. Actually, I believe it's a V6 in the M4 GT3. Versus V8. Both turbocharged, in case you were wondering. Both with, I don't know the displacement of the engine. I think it's maybe a 4-liter in the BMW and maybe like a 4.3 in the Corvette. I just made those numbers up. I have no idea. I'm usually reasonably good with engines, but not this time. Coming out of Parabolica, though, Craig S. does seem to be reeling Kitchens in. Coming into turn 1, though. Gap is not enough to make a move per se, but is still enough to apply pressure. A little bit of gravel on the exit, though, is going to hurt Craig's exits as they make the run towards turn 5, the second chicane. Oh, that's late on the brakes. That's late on the brakes for the Corvette. I was going to say that might have looked like it was going to be a Corvette munching on the rear diffuser of the BM, but from that camera angle, I think looks were just a bit deceiving. Looking a bit further ahead, Joshua Nelson wants to get himself into the top 10. Porsche versus Lamborghini, mid-engine versus rear engine, flat 6 versus V10. Neither of which are turbocharged, in case you were wondering. In the final corner, Georgi looking a bit quicker on the exit, but the slipstream is powerful, and starting at 2/10 could mean that the Porsche is going to have an opportunity here. Is Georgi going to go defensive? He's going to hold his line for the moment. I think he's confident that he's got the room, but late on the brakes, a bit of a late move for Josh Nelson. I think possibly a misjudgment on the brakes rather than a genuine attempt at an overtake. Georgi saw it coming. He's flashing, saying, hey, maybe don't do that. That was scary. It can be quite scary, yes. And I've missed Chris Barnes. He was in 11th last time we spoke about him. He's now up into 9th. He's ahead of these two that are fighting. He was on a tear and apparently tore through so fast that I didn't even notice. It seems up in the fight for 5th position. Raza's lost out to Wally Johnson. I think Luca Raza is going for a Hail Mary fuel save at this stage in the race. They have been tumbling ever since they came out of the pit lane for this final stint. They're realizing that, hey, maybe if I get on the same strategy as Richard Farah, I could find myself up. So they're trading pace for strategy, track position for strategy as well. And we'll see how that fares in a few laps' time. Joshua Nelson going to try it down the inside in Parabolica. Very, very close, the two. Nelson's got the run coming out of the corner, but the Lamborghini with the wider line is going to have the better exit. Unfortunately, though, for said Lamborghini, they're finding themselves on the wrong side, the outside, into turn one. So it's going to be last of the late breakers. Hard on the brakes for both of them. They're going to go too wide, and I think Georgi might make it stick. A little bit of hip and check. And Nelson finding himself very out of shape in the back of shot. And I think Dion Campbell might actually have the opportunity next. But a very, very good save for Nelson. It really looked like the rear wanted to overtake the front, as Porsches are known to do. As now it's looking like Luca Raza finding himself under a pair of pressure. He was only a second or so behind Wally Johnson, is now 5 seconds behind. So I think some sort of mistake in the last lap. You can see a 152.4 versus Poulin's 50.8. Their quickest lap of the race was last lap, mounting a charge. The three of them fighting for 5th position coming into the final stops. As we are coming close, we can take a look at the virtual energy. It does seem that Miguel Saba has begun to Hail Mary save themselves. They're bringing themselves closer to Richard Farah. Richard Farah still using about the same amount of fuel. Nick DeBrick, though, going for a move into one on Dan Poulin Jr. The move is done, but can he hold on to it? Because coming out of the final corner, coming out of the second corner, one Mustang on another. One had a bit of a better exit. And if Poulin, I was going to say, if you could get his nose in there, you might have the opportunity to stay down the inside. But wiggling from both of them. DeBrick's going to hang on to it. But Miguel Saba, I think, taking the Luca Raza approach and saving fuel rather than using pace. Their last lap alone, 2 and a bit seconds slower than Jace Wright. Luca Raza doing a 1 minute 55 in the last lap. So I'm wondering, it's almost getting to the point where they're putting themselves out of contention and maybe losing too much trying to save fuel. And so it's Luca Raza who's round actually just ahead. I said he was putting himself out of contention. He's really found an error in Ascari. That Ferrari maybe appearing to be a bit wounded. So we'll see exactly what happened. It was just up on the apex curb, and a dodge by one Mustang and a dodge by the other and into the back fence. Lifted off the ground briefly was the Ferrari, so it certainly was a huge moment, and I think some damage for Luca Raza. A very, very costly penalty, I think, in the very late stages. Nick DeBrick is in pit lane, the first of the final stoppers. Should get Georgi. Oh, he's gone round again. Coming out of turn one. I think he's driving a bit angry. And that car also is probably a bit damaged. Raza now just going to try to limp it home. Taking out some styrofoam. Dropping it on the track. I don't know. Call it confetti. But as we're coming in to the final moments before the pit stop, I think 3 laps for the top 2, 2 laps, possibly even one more after this one for Jace Wright. But he's really reeling on Miguel Saba. You can see Saba is just desperate to save that extra lap, I think. Realizing that if I don't save it, it will be lost. But on the final pit stop, actually, any extra fuel that's put in the tank, because you're not filling up to full, will stay there and will still be used. Unlike when you're completely filling the car, where that fuel is essentially wasted, and it's wasted time. He's desperate to save that final lap. There's Laurent Georgi coming out. All the way down in 18th, so something had to have happened to Georgi. As we're getting yellow flags thick and fast, Luca Razza's round again. Juan Botero was round just a moment ago. But Miguel Saba still pounding rounds, and Jace Wright's thinking that maybe this overtake isn't that important this lap, but he could lose a bit of time as a result. It's coming down to the wire just a bit, though. I do think... Oh, that was a bit of a wiggle on the exit of the second Lesmos. I do think Richard Farah is in a really, really good position here. I called it early. I was confident. 17 minutes to go. Still plenty to go wrong. We just saw with Luca Razza a great race ruined by a simple mistake. The fine margins of racing. As I believe a penalty late in the game for Franz Alarcon. Luca Razza actually has unfortunately retired from this race late in the day. Late in the night, as it were. But I'm going to assume it was a speeding in pit lane penalty for Alarcon. Don't say I'm right as usual. That's setting a bad precedent. I'm certainly not right most of the time. I am sometimes. At this point I've watched enough racing that I feel like I have a good in races like this where it's, you know, the artificial increase in fuel makes sort of the picture easier to see. I feel like I can call it pretty well, but I wouldn't toot my horn too aggressively. Chris Barnes is up to a net third. His extra lap of fuel, I think, is going to maybe put him a position up. Johnson and Wright and Hideyoshi and Nelson all in pit lane. Excuse me, Hideyoshi actually going past pit lane is still out for another lap. A lot of these drivers you can start to see with the energy as low as it is, they need to make it do. Let's say an average lap, Richard Ferris was doing about 7.5% usage per lap. A lot of these drivers are starting a lap with 6%, maybe 7%, and they are having to limp their car home to make it on fuel, and that's just going to lose them an extra bit of time. You can just see from the leader, Miguel Saba has lost a further 2 seconds on this lap. Richard Farah is going to come in for their final stop. The question is, where is Jace Wright going to be? I do not think they are going to be close. I think, unfortunately for Jace Wright, it was the wrong strategy call. Educated guess, yes, I would absolutely call it an educated guess. But there is an opportunity, though, for Wright in the final 15 minutes. They still have those newer tires, and they could possibly have an extra lick of pace, though they are being absolutely hounded by Wally Johnson at the moment. So I don't think things are quite going to plan. And the late surge from Wally Johnson, the fan club, I think, had it right, because he's surging. Late. Wright's going to fend him off, though. Here comes the switchback by the BMW coming out of the final corner. It's going to be a fight down towards turn 1. Coming out of pit lane, you could just barely see the McLaren at the very tippy end of the shot. Already going through turn 1. Miguel Saba's out as well. a lot closer than I would have anticipated. And I know why. Miguel Saba short felt the car, a bit of argy-bargy. The word of the day, very loose, is Jace Wright, but hanging on to it. Wally Johnson finding himself running in, 5th position for most of this race, but now up into 3rd. And if they can hang this on, these are net positions. This is it. And one final look at Virtual Energy, I promise, because I feel like some people get tired of me talking about it, but it's important, as you can see in tonight's event. But Miguel Saba, the reason he closed up in pit lane is you can see Richard Farah took an extra 5.5–6% of energy over Saba. So a bit of a short fill from the Mustang. Will he end up paying off? Will he end up making it? Will he end up having a fuel save just a bit towards the end? I can't say for sure. Todd Tillery is round in the final 12 minutes. Found themselves back up and running again, but unfortunately losing a position as a result. Jace Wright, though, whether it's maybe working the tires too hard, maybe realizing they need to run a different strategy, but suddenly they found themselves out of pace, and the BMW coming alive as the sun is beginning to set. Track temps, that is something I haven't talked about, but is absolutely apparent. It's dropped another degree. Earlier on when we looked, it was 38 degrees Celsius on track. It is now 25 as the sun has started to set, as the air has started to cool. So it could very well be that this Lamborghini doesn't work as well in the cold conditions, though I do not count Jace Wright out. This is the fastest one-lap driver we've seen tonight. They do have the fastest lap. That might be a good point. Michael Sutton saying that Wally got taken out earlier in another race today, so a bit of fire in the soul for Wally Johnson. But it might be a bit of a slow burner between the two, because you don't want to show your hand too early in the closing stages. I always like to think that if you can engineer it, make your pass as late as possible, because then you give limited opportunities to the driver behind you to get back through. But Richard Farah on pace to win it after relegating themselves to 3rd, sitting behind the Mustang of Miguel Saba for 2 whole stints before coming out in the net lead of the race after pit stop number 2, and has led it since then. Miguel Saba, of course, started 2nd, found himself in 1st in the opening moments, but wasn't able to hang on to it. Wally Johnson slowly chipping away at the field. Now up into 3rd with an angry Lamborghini on their tail. Jace Wright, our pole sitter, our race leader for much of the event, finding themselves down into 4th position. Nick DeBricking themselves. Well, that would mean they're doing badly. They're not doing badly. They're up into 5th. They had to work their way up, and they got through there. Chris Barnes, after finding themselves facing the wrong way in turn 1, what felt like ages ago, is now up into 6th position. An incredible recovery drive. They got the bit between their teeth and absolutely pounded round. Dan Poulin Jr. in 7th. Gabriel Prado in 8th. Joshua Nelson 9th. And Tetsuo Hideyoshi up from a 16th starting position rounds out your top 10. I do believe these are all pro drivers in the top 10 as well. Like I said, doing the best I can. I don't know who's pro and who's am and who's pro-am. I'll get there probably by the end of the season, or knowing me, we won't get there at all. One thing I will say for sure, which I think is as a result of the short fill by Miguel Saba, these two are really, really closing on the Mustang, the Shelby American Mustang of Miguel Saba. He's still having to use a lot less fuel than these two. These two filled up a lot more and are pushing like hell. Wally Johnson throwing caution to the wind and using up more fuel than the cars around him. Possibly Jace Wright thinking, hey, wait a minute. There could be an opportunity here for me to have a late race surge. No, Johnson realizes, oh, I'm maybe a lap short and has to save that. So I think Wright keeping pace in hand. Saba on the back foot. Showing the importance of not just fuel saving, but putting the right amount of fuel in the car at the end of the race. Calculations are difficult to do on the fly. My recommendation, whatever the computer tells you to do in LMU, just do that. It's my rule of thumb. It usually will give you an extra lap of fuel, so maybe you can drop it down. Whatever percent is an extra lap. But it hasn't ever underfueled me going that way. So if you're ever unsure, the fuel computer in your car is good enough. Racing is at as high of a level as these drivers do. They want to get it right. They want to get their calculations down perfect. They don't want to spend any extra time in pit lane. And the unfortunate thing is, you can still see last lap. Johnson and Wright almost identical. Miguel Saba 2 seconds slower. Second to third, or second to fourth now, separated by a tiny bit more than a second. This might work in Wright's favor if Johnson gets held up just a bit. If he's not able to make it through on the Mustang, there could leave room for Wright to make a move on him, but I think Johnson's going to have the pace, a defensive move as they go into Lesmo 1 for Saba. It's a tricky place to overtake the Lesmos, but you see Johnson thought about it, but he was like, nope, that would be silly. He's got to remember the car behind him. He can't throw away his lead over Wright on a silly dive. Now these three separated by less than half a second. Coming into Asari, a move from Johnson. Confident on the brakes. It didn't even really look like Saba was able to do anything about it. He's still lifting and coasting. He's still fuel saving. The cars around him are going at full chat. There's Todd Tillery, who's round and stationary. He's been stationary for some time in Ascari. But Johnson is through, and Wright needs to get this move done now. But I don't think he has the bottle. He's almost gone into the back of Wyatt Johnson. What this means now, Wyatt Johnson's able to push forward, maybe open up a little bit of a gap, while Jace Wright's going to have to wait a couple of corners for him to be able to make that move, but still. Now in the tow, that Mustang seems difficult to get by in a straight line now that it's not the front-running car. The final moments, everybody slated to go to the end, everybody wanting it more than others. Your fight for the final podium position as it's becoming Miguel Saba having to do some emergency fuel-saving measures, shall we call it, I think is stopped having to do it, realized they haven't enough on fuel. He started to push up as well, started to use quite a bit more fuel, started to use quite a bit more pace, and it's really bad timing for Jace Wright and really good timing for Wally Johnson, one of the back marking Corvettes stepping out of the way. Lots of flashes from those two. They're saying, get out of the way. We're trying to have a fight. But it's perfect for Wally Johnson. It's just allowed him to step away. You can see the gap now, 1.4 seconds. The traffic working perfectly. Perfect timing for Wally Johnson. And the Corvette now not seeming to want to get out of the way, was happy to let Wally Johnson through, but is taking their sweet time to let the other two through. That's Rodney Ramsey in that Corvette. I think this is going to be the best opportunity that Jace Wright has had. That Mustang, though, seeming really quick in a straight line, but you can see it closing. Saba doesn't want to give this up. It's going to have to be down the outside. Super confident on the brakes as Jace Wright into turn one, and the Mustang almost going into the back of him, turning into a parking lot into turn two, but a little bit of rubbing on the exit, but Jace Wright is through. Miguel Saba knocked off the podium in the final 2.5 minutes of this race. But still going back at him. They're side by side on the run. You can see Wally Johnson ahead, thinking, wow, this went really, really well. But around the outside comes Miguel Saba on the brakes. The run coming out towards Lesmo 2. It definitely seems that Miguel Saba has got all the fuel they think they need for the end of this race, because they are fighting in force. Jace Wright thinking, if only you could have done this a lap later. If only your saving could have stopped a lap later after I had overtaken you. Because getting past Wally Johnson is seeming like a pipe dream at this point. 4 seconds the gap. Wally Johnson going quicker than Richard Farah, but not enough laps down the inside. Suddenly a late move for Wright, but Wally Johnson, excuse me, Miguel Saba able to hold it up onto the curb. Somehow survives Jace Wright. In Ascari, we've seen a car go around off of less than that. That was excellent. Keeping it too wide all the way through Ascari is no small feat. These drivers making it look easy, but a huge wiggle for Miguel Saba. Coming out of the final corner, here comes Jace right on through. He says, thank you, I will take that very much. But we know that Mustang's quick. This could very well be, and I do very well believe that this is the final lap of the race. Richard Farah, a couple more corners for victory, and it's looking like all of these drivers might have saved too much fuel. A huge wiggle again. The rear is getting very loose on both of these cars. It's pass, back. A couple of opportunities remain. The Mustang is so quick in a straight line based on that. They're side by side now coming into the braking zone. I think Jason Wright is going to try to hold it, and he does. Super confident, but into the back goes Miguel Saba. There is absolutely no metal between these two. They're going to go side by side through turn one. And wide goes Wright, but he's going to stay there. Into Lesmo 2. They're still side by side. Jace Wright manages to hold it around the outside of Lesmo 2. That is not something you see every day. It's going to be Ascari. This might be the decider. Richard Farah is getting ready to come across the line, but I can't look away. Equal on the brakes, a little bit of rubbing. Wright holds it. It's going to be one more braking zone. Quickly, though, Richard Farah coming around the final corner is going to take victory. Strategy over pace. Ladies and gentlemen, Richard Farah is going to take victory at Monza. But what's happening with Wright and Saba? It seems that Wright's going to keep it into the final corner. Wally Johnson from nowhere to P2. Jason Wright is going to hold on to third in this race, and Miguel Saba is going to come across the line in fourth. That was one of the most exciting endings to a race I've ever seen. That was incredible work from both drivers. You can tell my voice is getting a bit hoarse. That was amazing. 5th through 8th now. Debrick, Poulin, Barnes, and Prado have come across the line. Joshua Nelson is going to finish in 9th in the opening round. Laurent Georgi in 10th, bookending 10th place with a Lamborghini. Tetsuo Hideyoshi across the line in 11th, followed by Campbell and Botero. A lot of these drivers right into pit lane. They are done driving for tonight. Ricky Bobby from 21st all the way up to 14th is going to cross the line. There's worse races than that. Bryce McClafferty, though, holding off Denzel Kitchens, a fight that I didn't even realize was happening. Craig Az also just behind him. That was a four-way fight that I completely missed that transpired in the final moments. But Bryce McClafferty, 15th overall as an amateur driver, might be asking some questions after this race. Is he really an AM driver? Unbelievable pace. Cedric Larcher, the final driver to come across the line tonight. It may have slowed down just a little bit in the final few minutes. But I tell you what, it really picked up at the very end. That was unbelievable. I almost wish that I caught the four-way fight that was transpiring there. I completely missed it. I was still trying to catch my breath. I still haven't quite caught my breath. But an incredible race from some incredibly talented drivers. And hopefully quickly before the server closes, I can get you your official race results. Richard Farah taking victory. Wally Johnson up to second. Jace Wright in third. If that was what you selected as your prediction, congratulations, you've won. Miguel Saba in fourth. Nick DeBrick in fifth. Dan Poulin Jr. in sixth. Chris Barnes, seventh. Gabriel Prado, eighth. Joshua Nelson, ninth. Laurent Georgi in 10th. And I think we're good. I think I can keep reading them. Ignore the background. It's fine. Tetsuo Hideyoshi in 11th. Dion Campbell in 12th. Juan Botero, 13th. Ricky Bobby, 14th. Bryce McClafferty, 15th. Denzel Kitchens, 16th. Craig S., 17th. Jerome in 18th position. Rem Wink, 19th. And Cedric Larcher rounding out the top 20. Rodney Ramsey, 21st position. Cameron Magruder, 22nd, followed by his father, Randy, in 23rd. Franz Alarcon in 24th. Brendan Liu in 25th. And Daniel Kent, the final finisher, with Todd Tillery, Luca Raza, Kevin Rivera, and Michael Mulinix not finishing the race and retiring at the very end. Goodness gracious. That was incredible. That was fantastic. A really, really strong season opener. I only wish I was able to catch my breath, but I suppose now I can. Now that we have come to the end of the program, I only hope that that level of drama, that level of fighting, and honestly, that level of cleanliness. That was a fully clean turn one we just witnessed at Monza. That doesn't happen every day, leave alone with 29 cars all steaming towards turn one. And I hope that this is a glimpse into what is to be expected of the Big Grid Sundays Championship. This is only round one, of course. And if you're interested in joining the grid for this race, I believe there are still a couple of slots available. There might only be one. I'm not sure. Regardless, if you want to join the grid for any of the current series run, head to America's Racing League, join the Discord, check us out on SimGrid. All the information will be there. If you are interested in watching more broadcasting by yours truly, what is wrong with you? I'm terrible at this. It's fine. It's fine. But I'll be back next Thursday for some more iRacing. And beyond that, expecting back here every Sunday for Big Rid Sundays. Next up, we are headed to Spa Francorchamps. After that, Silverstone. After that, Portimao. And after that, we're going to Texas for the Circuit of the Americas. And we will finish the season. Excuse me, we won't finish the season at Fuji, but we will go to Fuji for round 5. And then we will finish the season at the newest circuit to the LMU roster, Barcelona. Thank you to all the drivers who joined us tonight and gave such a good show. And thank you to all of you who kept me company and said nice things about me and apparently said that I have a good singing voice, which I know that's just a lie. But I appreciate you all joining me here. It's more fun when I have people hanging out with me, so I appreciate it. As I said, americasracingleague.com. That's all your info for all your things ARL. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. Have a wonderful rest of your week, however many hours remain. And have a wonderful next week. Be safe, be good, be nice. Don't be stupid. And if you're going to be stupid, don't do it around anybody else. I don't have any homework. Oftentimes I give homework, which I don't know if anybody follows. I never check homework. I'd be a good substitute teacher because I truly couldn't care less if you've done your homework. But I don't have any. Do something good for somebody else. I feel like I've said that before. But regardless, it's still good. Be good to people. Have a wonderful night. I'll catch you all very, very soon.